Have you fallen into an open manhole recently? Do you find yourself in the company of strangers? Well, then you might very well be in the feature Underground. If I were the titular character in a movie, that movie would be called Hunter Lanier. And I am here once again with a brand new review of an upcoming movie. This time it is Henry Johnson. Written and directed by legendary playwright David Mamet. This movie is an adaptation of Mamet's play by the same name, which was first performed on stage in 2023. And that original stage production featured all of the same actors that are in this movie. The first thing you need to know about Henry Johnson is that it will not be playing probably at your local theater, and it will not be on your go-to streaming platforms. This movie, you have to go to henryjohnsonmovie.com, where you can rent it on May 9th for $8, as they have apparently opted for the Louis C.K. model. I'm not sure of the business decisions that went into this release model, but I think it's safe to say it's going to severely diminish the amount of people that end up watching it, and probably even the amount of critics and journalists who give it any kind of coverage. But when someone like David Mamet comes out with a new movie, I will pay attention. Now, you're probably wondering right about now, is it worth the hassle to go to this website and watch the movie in this unorthodox way? Well, I'm here to say it is. This is a great movie, and yet another feather in the cap of David Mamet, which has so many feathers in it at this point that you could push him off a cliff and he would float right to the bottom. Mamet is known for his dialogue, and Henry Johnson is not some kind of late career phase transition. This is very much more of the same. Mamet doing what he does best, and there are no signs of deterioration. I haven't seen or read the play, so I can't say for certain, but it appears that there were no attempts, or very few attempts, to cinemafy it in any way. The movie only has 4 actors, and there's maybe 5 locations in total. It very much has that bare bones theater look, and just in many ways looks like a filmed play. When the movie starts, you are thrown into the deep end of what initially seems like a self-indulgent scene, as it's 2 characters going back and forth in that rhythmic Mamet fashion. You find them in the middle of a pre-existing relationship, so you're putting together the pieces of who these characters are, what they want, what they're talking about, and why you should care. All while they're never saying anything outright. They're talking over each other, they're leaving thoughts half finished, not making it easy for you. Now, when I use the term self-indulgent, I don't use that as a pejorative. If a writer is great at writing dialogue, I do not need there to be a plot or a character arc attached. I will gladly just listen, in the same way that I would shut up and listen if I were at dinner with 2 people who were very well spoken and had a lot of interesting things to say. So that's not a problem I have with the opening scene. Although I will say that the opening scene does not hint at how much I would end up liking the movie. There's some, I guess I would call it aesthetic awkwardness to how it looks. I don't know if it's the lighting, or I don't know exactly what it is. I exhausted all of my plays on these press screeners. They only give you like 5 plays. And sometimes you open it up and then you close out and it counts as a play. I used up my 5 plays, so I can't go back and look. But there's something about the way it looks that gives a bad first impression. Also, as an asterisk, as an additional asterisk, the press screener was obviously heavily compressed, so that didn't help. But also, perhaps more importantly, the dialogue in this opening scene I don't think is Mamet at his best. After you've watched the movie, the scene makes more sense in the macro, but in the moment, in the micro, which is just as important, if not more so, it's just not Mamet at his best. The scene feels more like a light sparring session than a real fight, if you know what I mean. It wasn't until the second scene, which is when Shia LaBeouf's character Gene is introduced, and the movie drops the pitter-patter dialogue with a succession of long monologues that I really started to lean in. And leaning in is very much intended, as Gene speaks very quickly and also in this mumbly way that forces you and poor Henry Johnson to lean in and pay attention. And once you're paying attention to Gene, you're already in deep waters. You find he's surprisingly thoughtful, but like the young man who memorizes a line from 3 different poems to impress girls, you start to get the sense that maybe he's more of an opportunist than a philosopher. And that makes Henry Johnson a perpetual opportunity. Gene doesn't have prison muscles. He doesn't have a collection of shivs. He doesn't have a gang behind him. But he's just as dangerous as any of those guys. I should also say that Shia LaBeouf is fantastic in this part, as he inhabits those nuances of this particular type of manipulator. The deep eye contact, the mumbling, the way he talks, the strategic use of ideas and theories that kind of partially make sense most of the time, and the sprezzatura, which, by the way, is one of my all-time favorite words, and I have finally found a reason to use it. By the third scene, and when I say scene, you might be wondering why I'm referring to them as scenes, but each scene is like 20 minutes. By the third scene, the story has firmly revealed itself, and you realize what you're watching. You're watching a brutal undressing of a very particular type of person, someone who allows their emotions, what they desire to be true, to inform their judgments, completely unregulated by reason. And you can tell Mamet has a unique animosity for this type of person, especially by one of the final lines in the film, which turns a somewhat pitiable, easy mark into an outright buffoon. Despite the fact that Henry Johnson himself doesn't say much, he does a lot of listening, especially once you get out of that first scene. He actually does end up also becoming a great character, and one of the more deeply pathetic characters that I have seen in recent memory. Much of that is because he's kind of a proxy for a type of behavior that doesn't get a lot of attention, much less an entire character, an entire play, an entire film dedicated to it. It's easier to say that Henry Johnson is gullible and dumber than a box of rocks, but there's something more universal to the character that I found interesting, and it's this part of human nature that wants to hide from reality and lie to itself because the lie is more comforting. It's more comforting for as long as it can stand up to reality, and your mileage may vary on that depending on the lie, but it never stands up to reality too long, and especially not for Henry Johnson. Despite that initial impression the movie gives off, or at least it gave off to me, which is that this is going to be a simple story that gets extended by these sailor's knots of dialogue, you actually end up getting quite the opposite. This is a very lean movie that feels like it's taken from a larger story, but now it's been condensed into this pill form for easy consumption. Now, maybe pill sounds too clinical because the movie is very enjoyable, so let's call it a Flintstones vitamin. Well, those are all my thoughts. Now it's time for you to let me know your thoughts on my thoughts. This is a movie I do think is worth going to the website and renting for $8. I did see on the website that they, in addition to renting the movie for $8, there's like $100 poster that you can buy that is signed by David Mamet that comes with the movie, the rental of the movie. And the poster is like this irreverent doodle by a Mamet. I thought that was pretty cool. Also, a little housekeeping. I'm no longer going to be doing the like and subscribe thing. It always felt a little gross. It always feels gross to beg. Even though it's not begging, it's asking. Is it different? Is begging and asking different? I don't know. And also, this is a little bit like digital busking, But from here on out, I'm just going to assume that you know how this YouTube stuff works. You understand how to support this channel if you want to. There's a like button, there's a subscribe button, there's a what's the one where you give me money? There's a button to give me money. It's called something weird. Um, you know all that stuff. So you'll figure it out. If you like videos, you know what to do. Next up, I will be seeing the new Mission Impossible movie on May 12th. I believe the review embargo will lift on May 14th. I am going to work extra fast to have that review up on May 14th. I have also decided to start doing a series of reviews of videos called Feature Pantheon. This is going to work kind of like Roger Ebert's Great Movies, where I will review movies that I think are among the best ever made. This will obviously be entirely subjective. This will be a good way to put out videos during those stretches of time when there's not a new movie coming out that I really care to see and talk about. Until then, I remind you, as always, that every day underground is a good day.